began to look at the question of digital assets and crypto as an opportunity for Goldman Sachs. Now that process of discovery is a lot more complicated for the large regulated banks because of the regulatory overlay and the complications that they have to navigate. But about 10 months ago, I was approached by the Coinbase team about an opportunity to come over and join them as their first chief policy officer. It was a conversation that began a real journey that I've been on ever since in terms of getting into the crypto space. It's been an extraordinary window into something that I thought I was observing from a distance at Goldman, but I didn't really appreciate the full scope and scale and the magnitude of it in terms of the significance to society until I actually took the lead. It's been an extraordinary and busy 9 months, and I've moved up, very happy to have taken.
Very cool, very cool. I know myself, when I made that leap into crypto, I had a very poignant conversation with my father about how I was switching field, and I said that my practice, we're going to go into just crypto. And my dad, typical Brit, suddenly put his company down and was like, "What? Sorry, walk me through what that is." And so I have to ask the question, as somebody that I myself was in startups, a little bit of foreign exchange, and saw what I refer to as not really a transferable skill set into crypto, but I guess as best as could be. What was the one thing that I think you've taken from where you were at Goldman on your journey and brought to Coinbase?
Well, the biggest thing is probably the most important thing, which is that I was at Goldman in the period prior to and through the financial crisis, and in all the years that followed, with the entire policy community around the world all at the same time trying to look at whether and how to re-regulate the financial sector. That was something that's always been unprecedented in our lifetimes in terms of the scale of that policy process that the big banks went through ever since '09. And being able to keep track of and participate in and contribute to regulators doing hard work all around the world in different markets, each looking at different aspects of the system that's never been really looked at before, was new for all of us. And there's a lot of parallels to that exercise to what we're going through in crypto, in the sense that you've got a new, emerging, disruptive, societally significant technology that's causing regulators of all stripes, privacy regulators, financial regulators, national security regulators, all to look at this technology all at the same time to try to figure out what to do with it. And some of them are doing this in a globally coordinated way, and some of them are doing it individually in individual markets. The pace of the movement is very different, and the ability of crypto to participate in that is critical, it's existentially critical. And coming from a background like mine has actually had some benefit to it, because I went through something which was almost unprecedented not that long ago, and I'm able to bring some of those skills to the table here, which I'm happy to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think actually I will go one further than that and say that you actually existed in one of the biggest houses during what some see as the catalyst for the creation of crypto. If we look at that timeline as to when Bitcoin was created, parking aside any kind of feelings on any kind of financial institution, I think the sentiment at the time was something needs to change. And I think Bitcoin may have been born, and of course crypto, out of that whole thing. And I think really that then you've also touched on something that's fantastic, and I think not a lot of people appreciate it. As a fellow learning professional, as a lawyer, the leap into crypto, and I will use the term leap, is a very brave one. It's a very bold one. People romanticize about crypto, they romanticize about what it can be, but I hope you agree with me in this sentiment. When you sit this side of the fence, it's a very different battle that we fight almost every day, because it's half education and it's half, explanation. First of all, explaining what you're doing, and secondly, explaining why you're doing it. And this is why I personally absolutely admire the step that you've taken to where you've gone. To go from a big house such as Goldman, where it opens doors instantaneously. Everybody knows what Goldman is, everybody knows what they do. To Coinbase, which absolutely, they're a well-respected firm in the crypto industry. But it still doesn't quite open as many doors in crypto. And you were sure as I saw, Silicon Valley 5 years ago, if anybody uttered the word crypto, it was very dangerous. It was very narrow. So it's very cool to see that professionals such as yourself, learned experts who've spent that much time in the legal field, bigger houses, are now coming over to what, dare I say, us newbies are referring to as, what we think is going to be the future. I'd like to change tack a little bit, if I may. I know Coinbase has come under a little bit of flack in the last few years over some of the business practices, some of the things they've done. And I want to phrase that in the context of that is completely normal. However, what do you see in your position as the company as the steps that Coinbase is going to be taking to both mitigate the things that it may have done, which maybe it's now learned from, and what it's doing moving forward to improve its market position for its users?
Well, I've been at Coinbase now for 9 months, and I will say that the amount of investment that's being made by the company in all aspects of compliance, control, security are extraordinary. I mean, really beyond anything that you can imagine. And it's a very much of a regular part of the dialogue that we have. So without reference to anything in particular that you may be thinking about, I would say the culture one is of building, not just building in terms of the innovation and the product and the kind of next generation of crypto applications, but also building the infrastructure for a large regulated business that is able to navigate different markets and remain the most trusted name in crypto. And so that process of building is going to take root over time, and I think you're seeing the early stages of that as you work. For people who watch the company quite closely, you see it quite vividly in terms of hiring and the rest. So there's a lot of investment and commitment to that, and I think people who know Coinbase understand that.
Yeah, I think that's also to be highly commended, by the way. In an industry where we've seen, and no names here, but we've seen so many organizations that have tried to do things backwards. They've tried to become heavily developed and then get themselves regulated. I feel like Coinbase, and by all means keep me honest here, but I feel like Coinbase's ethos has always been to do it right and do it succinctly and certainly professionally. And that's definitely to be commended in this industry. Speaking of this industry,
Cap on that, if I can interrupt, I think that's the reason why I actually came to Coinbase. When I talked to Brian and Emily and Paul Greenwald and others, the reason, and this was a big part of the discussion I had with the leadership when I made the decision to come over here, which was, why exactly do you need a chief policy officer, and then why do you need somebody who may have the kind of experience that I have? And it was exactly for that reason, the commitment to lean into regulation, to really make good on the public statements that Brian has made a number of times about regulation being an enabler. And my recruiting process and the fact that I made the jump and the fact that they've committed the resources they've had to my function, I think is evidence of that. I think regulation is a reality. It's a big and important part of the kind of the adoption curve and the acceptance curve around the world as we move from crypto being sort of a niche product to becoming a mainstream product. And that was a big part of why I felt like it was important for me to be a part of this exercise, because of that very commitment.
Now that's genuinely really refreshing to hear, because I think you and I will speak from our experience of the amount of counsel and legal professionals that we hear that are not given the resource to do really what they need to do. Because many people don't appreciate this, and I guess maybe in crypto this boils down a little bit to the romanticism. But in terms of getting companies regulated, just as a foundation point, but then in terms of being able to enable them to be regulated to scale and grow, is a mission critical piece, which is overlooked by so many, or certainly in a very serious capacity. For me, as somebody who's not with Coinbase looking outside in, it is one of the things that differentiates you from a lot of your competitors and from a lot of people within the industry overall. So again, I really feel like that's to be commended, and it is very refreshing to hear you say that you are receiving that kind of support within the company from what sounds like from the top down. It's outstanding to hear that.
No, absolutely. There's no question about it. Now, it's a very hard process, and Coinbase is committed to it, not just in terms of accepting regulation as it comes, but doing the hard work of meeting regulators where they are, answering the questions that they have. And the questions that we get asked by regulators and policymakers around the world are perfectly legitimate questions, and many of them are actually track the kind of questions that you got from your father, and we all get at the dinner table, or you get from friends, what about this, what about that, how do you think about this? Is crypto being used by bad people to do bad things? Is there a consumer protection angle that needs to be attended to? All those same questions are the same questions that regulators have. And it's incumbent on all of us in the sector, particularly maybe big companies like Coinbase, to take the resources that they have and commit to helping answer those questions. And we've been doing a lot of that since I joined the company, but there's even more that you'll see. We're trying to build a real capacity to be a significant contributor to policy debate, and it's an obligation I think that we feel we have, and one that we're eager to meet. It's a really important process for us all to get into. I think the other thing I would say, Cal, just for you to think about is, the disruptive power of crypto is certainly disruptive to incumbents in financial services, or really in any other area where crypto has an application. But it's very disruptive to policymakers and regulators too, because it changes the paradigm about how you think about things. And that disruption is something, again, you have to take on with huge respect, because regulators have a really important function. They've done it for quite some time. Many of them do it very, very well. And crypto brings in both a challenge to the existing patterns of policymaking and regulation, but it also brings an opportunity to improve in areas where maybe regulation can be improved by the transparency of the blockchain or the special features of the crypto economy. And we're eager to be a part of that as well. What can be done better, more effectively, more efficiently, but also in a way that accommodates the new technology. And that's a big, important exercise, and I think all of us in the sector should embrace that.
100%, 100%. It's one of the reasons why we are one of the few law firms that do a lot of governmental-led work. And I mean, there are many people in this industry that are also doing government work. But I mean, as an example, I helped write some of the laws in Taiwan for security tokens and crypto assets. And I think this, for me, is one of the few times in history where I feel like regulators are actually listening to people. It's filtering the other way. I use the example of usually legislation starts at the top and comes down, but I feel like this time it starts at the bottom and it's working its way up. It is a great opportunity for learned professionals, legal professionals like you and myself, to make an impactful difference. And it means that we enable companies like Coinbase and like Gresham to grow and build with standards to help the industry overall. And I think that's such a healthy thing and something that's needed right now. But I think one of the things that we don't, I feel like we don't talk about enough as lawyers, and I feel like we don't talk about enough as an industry, is what we do to backstop and those protection mechanisms that we put in place to protect clients, users, companies. So perhaps you can talk very briefly, without giving any specifics, about that, about some of the Coinbase's commitment to, you mentioned the bad actors, the bad guys, it's rife in this industry. And to segue, I always explain to people, wherever there is new technologies, there will be new bad guys. There is nothing we can do about that. But perhaps you can talk a little bit about what Coinbase's position is there, and their ethos and their game plan to kind of backstop, protect against the bad guys, and to build out a future-proof Coinbase to keep everybody safe. I've actually lost sound. I'm so sorry, Bob. I don't know if you can. I don't know if you, Faryar. Can you still hear me okay? No, I've lost sound. Oh my goodness. Okay.
I hear it. I got you.
No, it's okay. You looked deep in thought, and I didn't want you to kind of get interrupted, but volume is a necessity in this. So please start from the top.
Yeah, I think that's a good question that you're asking, Cal. The answer to which is on several levels. In terms of the security of the system itself, in terms of protecting people's accounts and the broader Coinbase platform from a security perspective, that's something the company spends enormous money, time, resources into. We have probably one of the most secure, cyber-secure platforms anywhere, and it's something we take enormous pride in, but it's obviously something we're not complacent about at all. So it's an issue and focus of enormous ongoing investment and attention. The other part of it is the actual customer experience. And I think if you've been on our platform, you understand that there's a big educational component to how we interact with our users. So when you sign up to Coinbase and you begin your crypto journey perhaps with us, one of the big things that you'll learn is that there's opportunities, a multitude of educational videos that people can listen in, participate in, and some of those, as you participate, you actually earn crypto as a part of your reward for educating yourself to becoming a more effective and more informed user of crypto. I think our own experience is that the better informed the user is, the more they understand the space, the more they understand the assets, the more they engage and participate. So there's a real complementary aspect to getting users educated, informed, and the degree to which they're eager to participate. And I think that complementary aspect's been good for our business, but it's also been good for our users, and that's something that we're quite pleased with.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I will compliment that sentiment. And in the interest of full disclosure, I'm an avid Coinbase user. We actually, as a professional organisation, only use Coinbase as our sole source because it's reputable and it's very, very easy to correlate. So from a user perspective, moving on from the education piece you were talking about, which I refer to as the retail market, we in the business side of things, as a professional firm, only use Coinbase. And I have to say, as a user of it, as an organisation which uses it, the user experience is very much there. It does deliver on a lot of things. If you were ever looking for any feedback, it does deliver on a lot of things. I hope that you guys are aiming for it to deliver on. But look, let's finish on something a little bit more light-hearted. What, for you in your personal journey into crypto, what's been the most fun thing that you've seen? What's kind of blown your mind a little bit that when you sat down in that first interview, you didn't even imagine?
Well, I'll give you a funny answer, Cal. The answer that comes first to mind. One of the things I discovered with crypto is something that I never came across at Goldman or in any of my other jobs, which is that everywhere, in every place, there are crypto enthusiasts who've been on their own crypto journey for quite some time. And so whenever we would deal with government agencies or regulators or policymakers or even journalists or really any kind of public stakeholder that we deal with or I deal with in the course of my job, a number of times I've run across people who are in this office or that office or this field or that field who are themselves crypto enthusiasts has been extraordinary, and it makes, in a way, the advocacy job that I have, the responsibility I have to convince important people about how to think about the crypto economy that much easier, because there are people on the other side of that table inevitably who've already kind of embraced the technology and are on their own journey. And so it's been a fascinating thing that I never came across in any of the previous iterations of my professional career, and it's been a really pleasant and fun one to come across in crypto.
Outstanding. Whoever knew people would want to talk to lawyers about what they do for a living?
Exactly.
Yeah. I'll leave you with a funny anecdotal story to mirror the kind of community spirit that we found. Flipping back to my father, because it seems very appropriate. We started on that, so I'll finish on that. My father's an elderly gentleman, a very typical Londoner, as I may say so myself, and he didn't understand crypto, wanted me to understand it. And whenever I'd go to London, we'd go to a pub, as you typically do, surrounded by people that you know, and people would ask what I do for a living. I'd say, I'm in financial law, I'm in law, I'm a lawyer in finance, I work in finance. Because the monotony of trying to explain what you do in crypto is inevitably followed by, what do you think of this coin? What do you think of that? What do you think of this? We love the passion of this industry, we truly do, but 10:30 on a Friday night, when it works all week, and you're just trying to have a pint down the bar, discussion of what crypto you love with a stranger is not something you do. And so I revert to this fallback, which is why I just work in finance. Anyway, my dad would lean over my shoulder and like, it's in crypto. So I got a little fed up with this, and I wrote a book, A Little Book of Crypto, to explain to people what crypto is. And my father bought it and read it, and lo and behold,